let me know when the live stream begins so that we can begin.
Seconds began. Started.
All right. Great. So welcome to our speakers and to our audience. We are very happy to have you all here. I am Zakaria Abdulmumin, President of the Amnesty International at Middlesex University of London. And here with me is Sarah and Sam from the University of Warwick Amnesty and University of Exeter Amnesty. Thank you so much for all of you for being here. First, we're going to begin with some ground rules. If you have any questions, please post it in the chat on Microsoft Teams or in the comments on our YouTube live stream. Please keep yourselves muted so that we respect our speakers. And if anyone speaks abruptly or in any way inappropriate, they will be removed from the call. Thank you. And we will now begin with introducing Dr. Joe Smith Finley from Newcastle University.
Hi, so Joe's going to talk to us about the erasure of Uyghur culture in school textbooks, which is an upcoming paper she wrote with, sorry, do you want to go on, Joe, then?
Yeah, I'm going to start sharing the screen. Please let me know if it works. Can you see this now?
Okay, can we have it on slideshow, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, should I go?
Yes, please.
Okay, so thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really honoured to be here with everyone tonight and great to be speaking to students across the three universities. I'm going to talk about my current research on cultural genocide, particularly focusing on the spheres of language and education. So just to give a bit of background, in Xinjiang over the past 4 years, we've seen a series of Han majoritarian assimilationist policies from the government directed against Turkic Muslims and especially against Uyghurs. And this has been really in the aftermath of the 2009 Urumqi protest, which turned into a riot, and especially since the launch of the Chinese government's People's War on Terror in 2014. So current state policies include restrictions on the Uyghur language, the replacement of bilingual education, that's Uyghur and Chinese parallel educations, with national language education, which means just Mandarin teaching in schools and colleges, the desecration and destruction of religious sites, mosques, shrines, the coercive Sinicization of Uyghur culture, gendered violence, including enforced sterilizations, mass disappearances, detentions, and systematic human rights violations committed in the network of internment camps that I'm sure many of our audience members will have heard about by now. So these violations include physical and psychological torture, in some cases deaths, and we also have now a situation of forced labour in Xinjiang, where some of the graduates from the camps are being put into forced labour situations. So I wrote an article in December 2020 with a Czech scholar called Ondřej Klimeš. And in that article, we draw on visual data that I gathered during my last trip to Xinjiang in summer 2018 to support the charge of cultural genocide. We also ask in that article whether the term cultural genocide for Xinjiang, for what is happening in Xinjiang, should now actually be replaced with the term genocide. And this is, of course, in the wake of evidence of coercive birth control emerging in June 2020. So the recent actions of the Xinjiang authorities conform very closely to the original conception of genocide formulated by the the original creator of the term. So this was Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin. So in his seminal work, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe, Lemkin defined genocide as a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of the essential foundations of the life of national groups, with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. The objectives of such a plan would be the disintegration of the political and social institutions, of culture, language, national feelings, religion, and the economic existence of national groups, and the destruction of the personal security, liberty, health, dignity, and even the lives of the individuals belonging to such groups. So today I'm going to focus solely on the example of cultural genocide in the spheres of language and education, as I've said. For the past few years in Xinjiang, Uyghur children have had no longer had a choice about which school to attend. They have had to attend Chinese medium schools. And there they're immersed in Mandarin Chinese for all but 3 hours per week. In just those 3 hours, they can learn Uyghur, but they learn Uyghur as if it were a second language. So the impact of this shift is illustrated by, for example, an 8-year-old Uyghur girl in an Urumqi bazaar being unable to sing an entire song in Uyghur. So she's been hearing only Chinese language and some English language songs in the primary school classroom. And she now has this fragmented knowledge of one single Uyghur song, which probably dates back to her kindergarten days, a time before the new current era of Mandarin Chinese as the common language of the country. So fears are growing in the Uyghur community that the imposition of Chinese immersion education from kindergarten onwards will inflict significant damage on Uyghur children's command of their mother tongue and on their knowledge of Uyghur culture more broadly. So in 2018, visual examples of religious and cultural erasure could be found everywhere across Xinjiang. I photographed many in Urumqi and in Kashgar. So on the first slide there, you can see a textile banner hanging outside an Urumqi primary school. This is the #1 primary school in Urumqi. And it shows a Han Chinese teacher teaching a mixed ethnicity class. Now what is noticeable on this textile banner is that the Uyghur script for Yakshimusis, hello, in Uyghur has been literally cut out from the textile. It's been literally cut out, leaving this black triangle. And this is because of its connection with the modified Arabic script and its link to Islam. Almost like cutting out a cancer, you might say. So the disappearing of the Uyghur script reflects a broad line policy documents relating to the earlier policy of bilingual education. These documents have now disappeared online, and they've been systematically replaced by documents that instead refer to the national language education, which means an education in Chinese only. And in the same way, Islam and Uyghur culture have disappeared from school textbooks. So my current work is with a Uyghur folklorist at McGill University in Canada called Dilmurat Mahmud. And we have been analysing a set of 6 Uyghur medium, Uyghur language primary level textbooks called Til Adabiyat. Second slide, please. So Til Adabiyat literally means language and literature in Uyghur. And this is a set of textbooks originally published in 2015, but revised in 2018 in the wake of the re-education campaign from 2017 onwards. So our analysis showed that in these textbooks, Han Chinese cultural and social life, so Confucian, secular culture, is highlighted all the way through. Uyghur culture and social life, so Turkic Islamic characteristics, are almost totally absent. The word Islam does not appear even once. The ethnonym Uyghur appears only once or twice, and that's in the official name for the region, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Pictures of the human characters show only Han facial features and cultural dress, while Uyghur features and cultural dress are absent. Next slide, please. So in this picture, in this image, you can see very typical Han Chinese and traditional facial features. And the pictures throughout these textbooks books are like this, even though the books are aimed at Uyghur primary school students. So the human characters in the texts are Han Chinese also. They have typical Chinese personal names. Uyghur personal names are almost completely absent. In the texts about animals and nature, these texts almost always depict elements of inner and coastal Chinese, East Coast Chinese physical geography and ecology. Animals and nature native to the Xinjiang region are almost completely absent. Han Chinese and foreign or Western literatures are highlighted, Turkish or Middle Eastern literatures absent. Uyghur literature and folklore absent. And all of the folk stories are selected from Han Chinese sources. So these cuts, we argue, embody a deliberate intention to invisibilize and in the long term eradicate the Uyghur people as a separate ethnic group or nation. So by also invisibilizing Xinjiang, the territory, Xinjiang, the place, as a separate homeland with unique geographical characteristics, the state imposes this assumption that Uyghurs are inextricably part of Han China. Li Bukai cannot be separated from Han China. And the clear message here is that it's no longer possible for Uyghurs to bypass Han China as they had been doing prior to the current harsh period of internment, and connect with culturally sympathetic cultures like the Turkic, Central Asian and Arab cultures, as they had prior to 2016. Now they're only allowed to interact with the outside world as loyal, assimilated members of the decidedly Han majoritarian Chinese state. So, just finally, on only one page of the 6 textbooks, next slide please. On only one page of the 6 textbooks did we find one sole picture of a group of young students who are wearing modern clothes and the red sort of Chinese communist pioneer ties, but they are showing typically Uyghur facial characteristics. And you can see the girl in the pink dress in this image has her hair dressed in braids, multiple braids, which is obviously a style that's very typical and unique to Uyghur culture. We were fascinated to find that this picture is almost identical to the one which appears on the cover page of that book. But there are some important differences. Next slide, please. Final slide. So the version on the book's cover has been altered. It's the same picture, but it's been altered. And the students' deep-set Caucasian eyes, which were represented with pencil shading in the eye sockets to introduce depth, were replaced with shallow-set eyes typical of Han Chinese and other East Asian peoples. And most obviously, the girl in pink no longer has multiple braids. Now she has 2 regular pigtails, such as you might see on any Han child. So, of course, we wondered what must be going on here. But given the systematic invisibilization of almost every aspect of Uyghur culture elsewhere in these textbooks, we have speculated in our article that the previous picture, previous slide please, the picture of the Uyghur children has actually been left in the revised set of textbooks by mistake. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for that, Jo. That was great.
Am I still sharing my screen?
No.
Okay, great.
If there are any questions from the audience, please let us know through the YouTube comments or through a message here on Microsoft Teams. Now, Sam, are there any questions from our Google Forms or?
I think so, but I think it's probably best to leave the Q&A to the end.
Okay, very well. Now we will transition to Dr. Erkin to provide us with some very interesting stories and experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. How long time I have? Can you hear me? How long time I have?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, got you. Okay, should I just introduce myself or give you some background about what's happening in Xinjiang?
Both would be great, thank you.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Erkin Sidick. I am an Uyghur, born and grew up in Xinjiang, Aksu city. That's where I was born, and went to elementary and middle high school there, and went to college in Urumqi, to Xinjiang University, got a bachelor degree in electrical engineering. After that, I went to Japan for 2.5 years as a visiting scholar, and after that came to the US, got master in physics and PhD in electrical engineering, worked in National Sandia Lab, Silicon Valley, and after that joined NASA in 2004. My profession is a senior optical engineer. I build space telescopes. That's what I do. And on the side, I do some activities about Uyghur people. The one thing about me is I was very well known when I was in Urumqi in Xinjiang University. I was the president of the Student Association, president of Xinjiang Student Federation, and the vice president of all Chinese Student Federation. And I did very well academically, so a lot of people knows me. For that reason, the people sends me information. I get a lot of information about what's happening in Xinjiang, East Turkestan, that's not reported by reporter. If you search, you will get an article published in January of 2018 by Amnesty International. They published the first number about how many people were detained in concentration camps. That article says more than 800,000, probably more than 1 million. We need to pay attention to the time. It was January of 2018. And the most media still uses the same number, saying more than 1 million people were detained, locked up, kind of thing. My latest information came from very high-level police officials in Urumqi, actually from 2 people. One told me about how many people were detained since 2017. The number is 5.6 million. Another official told me what's the number since 2014. That's when the detention to concentration camps started. If you check carefully, the concentration camps, some of them built by 2014, and they started detaining Uyghur people. So more than 9 million people have gone. Now, if you compare this number with the Chinese officials' figure about Uyghur population, you don't understand what's going on. The Chinese government's highest number about Uyghur population is 12.7 million. But the population number of the minority is a secret in China. They don't tell you the truth, what the real number is. There is a retired American general who worked for CIA, has a video very recently, and he mentions there were about 20 million Uyghur people. So you need to understand this in terms of 20 million Uyghur people, not 12 million or 11 million. So the situation is so bad. Among this 9 million people, the 2.1 million were transported to jails in Han provinces. When we say Han provinces, it includes all the provinces that excluding Xinjiang, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, those areas. And about 1.8 million people were transferred from concentration camps to jails. And up to close to 1 million people have died since 2014. I get this kind of number, and the reporters don't publish that because they cannot verify it. And the reason they cannot verify it, the China controls the visit to Xinjiang very tightly. No visitors, reporters, or investigators are allowed to go to Xinjiang. And so far, nobody could take out a single picture showing the inside of the concentration camp, what's going on there. One police officer recently came out, and when my friend asked him what's the situation look like inside the concentration camp, this is what he told, his exact word. Imagine a hell on the earth. and multiply it by 100 times. The Xinjiang concentration camp situation is at least as bad as like that. 100 times worse than the hell. That's the situation. And because nobody is investigating and reporting from the ground, so the people outside don't understand what's going on. The situation is very bad. Half of the Uyghurs almost gone right now, especially males. And in this Spring Festival that happened a couple of days ago, Chinese New Year Festival, you see a lot of video, men spending time with Uyghur women whose husbands were all taken to concentration camps. It is horrible. The Uyghur nation, Uyghur peoples that you know of is gone, completely gone. You cannot find anything about that anymore. That's the situation. Now, because the time is running out, let me just tell you very quickly why China does this. The Xi Jinping's master plan was kill the 1/3 of the Uyghur population, lock up 1/3 of them, and convert the remaining 1/3 to automatons, to humans acts like a machine, only receives orders and cannot resist to anything. Those are the humans they want to convert the rest, and bring them back to the living standard of the Middle Ages. You can see all those signs right now. It's happening right now. This is Xi Jinping's master plan. He mentioned this in a secret meeting in 2014. So we are heading there already, and more than half of the job has been done. Now the key question here is why China does this? Why China wants to get rid of the Uyghur people? There are several major reasons for that. The first one is the needs for Belt Road projects. That China started a one road, one belt projects. It has three main land routes. One starts from Xi'an and passes through Xinjiang. Other two starts from Xinjiang. One goes to the Gwadar port in Pakistan, another one goes to the Central Asia. For this project to be successful, China needed to be stable, and the Chinese government considered Uyghurs as a factor of instability. So what they are doing right now is the final solution to get rid of Uyghur people, so there's no more instability in the region. That's the first number one reason. Second is a concern about the war. There is a Chinese government advisor in the central government, also the professor of the National Defense University. He has a lecture from 2011 in which he says he did a survey in Xinjiang for 2 years, from 2009 to 2011. And he was surprised the density of the Uyghur population in southern part of Xinjiang. Kashgar, Hotan, 95% of the population were Uyghurs. And he said, he gave a presentation at the school in Beijing, and he says this: if there is a war breaks up between China and the US, America can easily arm 300 to 500 Uyghur men, and these men will fight against the Chinese troops. I will not stop until I solve this problem. Now they solve this problem. Uyghur men is gone, like 70% of them, they're gone. You saw some video of people being transported in train station, all wearing the blue uniform. And the people said, oh, they are concentration camp detainees transformed from one camp to the next. It's not. They are young Uyghur men, very religious, who did not agree that all the good deeds comes from the Communist Party. They think all the good deeds comes from the God. That kind of very faithful people. They just put them together, took to the other part of China. What they do with them? Organ harvesting, biological experiments, and they kill them. How many of them? 2.1 million. There are reports by Bitter Winter. But Bitter Winter is an online journal headquartered in Italy. They have a lot of reporters on the ground. They do investigation. They put out several reports in detail. What happened to those people taken to other part of Han China? Chinese government did not take them to keep them alive. It's not. Keeps them, let them die there. Organ harvesting. That China has a very active bioweapon program. They experiment with human beings. The Uyghurs are the best candidate for them. So The number is staggering, very big. The Uyghur kids, more than 800,000 Uyghur kids separated from parents. And there are children detention center right now. So if I can go on and on, the bottom line here is, and there's other reason, like China has a needs for land and resources, but not for people. China has more human supplies than what they need. So human life is not a concern for them. Number 4 is the opportunity. China bought out most governments in the world, and also the international institutions like a UN, a WHO, a kind of institutions. So now they can do anything they want. The number 5 and number 6 reason has something to do with the Chinese history and the culture. If you live in China for a couple of months, you will know what it looks like to live there. The Chinese people cannot accept other culture, other races also. You have only two ways to keep alive. One is get assimilated, become Chinese, or you die. No other reason. These are the main reasons why China is doing what it is doing to the Uyghur people. So the other part is here and there, it's all surrounded of this core reason. So the situation is so bad, and then now you can see, you see I am an engineer, and I have 2 jobs. One is my regular job, one is I try to send out information that I got from Uyghur people. Just yesterday, I got a piece of information. I went back to Xinjiang in 2006, 7, and 9, after not being able to go back for 15 years. When I went there, the students wanted to meet with me because I wasn't well known, and I work in NASA. The people are so interested in the work that I do. I build space telescopes to find exoplanets with life on it. So it's a very interesting topic. I have given a lot of presentations around the world. I travel every year. And when I went back home, they asked me to meet. And I asked the government, can I do that? Can I meet students? They said, yes, you can, but you cannot give presentation. But it's okay if you take pictures with them, go to campus, take pictures with them. And that's what I did. And I just 2 days ago, I got one text content which says, one of the girls who was with me in 2009 at Xinjiang University when I went there, she was later wrote to me a couple of emails asking for advice going to abroad to study. And this happened in 2009, but she was arrested in 2018 because she had contact with me and given 12 years of jail time. His brother is in Japan. You can talk to him. He can tell you the whole thing. I met about 3,000 students in 2009 because of the reason that I work in NASA. They thought I'm a NASA scientist. They want to talk to me. They basically asked me 3 questions. One is, how did you study when you were in Xinjiang University? I was a Uyghur student. I finished all of my education in Uyghur language. I learned English by myself. I also speak Chinese and Japanese. And so I tell them story of how I did. Second thing is, how we should prepare if we want to go to abroad. And I give them advice. I was a volunteer advisor for a long time. People write me letter, I reply to them. I started this service before email started by writing letters. Later on, the email came about, and we could communicate with email. Third question is what I do at NASA. These are the 3 topics. And we sat in front of the library on the track field, outside, daytime, with the government permission. But starting 2017, meeting with me became a crime. All those young kids are gone. I have pictures of them. I cannot sleep well. They're all gone. It is very tragic what's happening to our people. Right now, because the world cannot see by themselves, the investigators, reporters cannot go to Xinjiang, take pictures, take video, and show the world. The people just, when we talk about that, people just cannot imagine what's happening. But for us, I know we know everything. My middle school teacher, literature teacher, Adabiyat Muallimi, literature teacher, he became the principal of the middle school for 20 years. He was detained at the age of 78 and died 3 months later in the camp. Another young guy, his name is Mutalib, came to the US in 2000, got 2 master's degree, 2 MBA degree. He had a wife, they had 2 children, went back in 2005. He got arrested in 2018, January, stayed 9 months in the camp, released in October, but died 9 days later in the Urumqi hospital. Reason, internal bleeding. This is a bodily destruction tactic of the Chinese government. They put people in the concentration camp. Even they leave the concentration camps, they don't live like in a healthy way. The internal body is gone completely. We have people come out, die within 1 month, or within 1 week or 2 weeks. That guy is only 42 years old. I have so many stories like that. And another person, his name is also Erkin Sidick. He's a teacher at the Urumqi electrical school. In summer of 2017, something like that, they organized a group of 8 teachers from the school, went to 3 countries to visit Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. The school arranged that, 8 people, because they're good performers, good people. And when they came back, the Erkin Sidick, the teacher, got caught at the Beijing airport. And the head of the group is the Chinese, the principal of the school. He explained this Erkin Sidick lives in Urumqi, not Erkin Sidick in the US. And they said, this is none of your business. They kept him for 3 days, tortured him. After that, they called the police in Xinjiang, take him back. He was taken back and died within 1 week. He died, only 50 years old, very good teacher. He died because his name is Erkin Sidick. They know he's not me. I am in the US. The face, our looks don't look like at all. But they still did this. China has a philosophy. They say it is okay to kill 1,000 people by error, but don't leave one person, one bad guy escape. This is the Chinese policy. This is happening. Okay, sorry, I think I exceeded my time. I can answer any question you have later on. Thank you very much for listening.
Dr. Erkin Sidick, thank you so much for that emotional and shocking contribution. I'm still trying to find the words of how to react to that. Thank you so much for being here. And if anyone has any questions for Dr. Erkin, please leave them in the chat here or in the comments on YouTube. Thank you so much, Dr. Erkin.
Thank you.
Now let's transition to Paul Erdennaust. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. And Rodney Dixon QC from the Temple Gardens Chambers in London. Now, as I understand, you want to speak about some United Nations inquiry or commission?
Yes. Good evening, all. Thank you for inviting us. Myself and Paul and our colleague Anne Color from Temple Garden Chambers have filed a complaint at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, asking for the ICC prosecutor to investigate this case, and in particular the harrowing accounts that we've just heard from Dr. Erkin and so many others. We say that the court clearly has jurisdiction, even though China is not a state party, but the court clearly has authority to investigate this case. Just so you have the background very briefly in various stages. The first stage was we were instructed by the East Turkestan government in exile, acting on behalf of Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples, to put forward all the evidence that exists, to ask the prosecutor of the ICC to open an investigation. She has the power to do so, to take that step herself, even if the matter is not referred to her by a state party. If victims come forward and ask her to investigate. She has the power, if she believes there's a reasonable basis to do so, to start that investigation. And just so that everyone understands, the purpose would be to investigate those at the highest level who are responsible and to arrest them and prosecute them in The Hague if they travel outside of China. So the aim here is to get very tangible justice for what is happening in China at the moment. That was the first stage. We filed that with her, and she considered it. The second stage involved her coming back to us and saying that, yes, there is a lot of evidence here of terrible things happening, but I need more evidence of jurisdiction in this case to move forward. So that everyone understands that the court can only take this case if it has jurisdiction. In other words, if it has the power to investigate those concerned. And it can only have that through either the perpetrators being from a state that signed up, which clearly is not the case here because the perpetrators are Chinese officials, or if the crime takes place on the territory of a state that signed up. So territory is obviously the vital one for us. And our case rests on the fact that at least part of the crimes, the alleged genocide and crimes against humanity, have taken place on the territory of ICC member states. And here we're talking about two in particular, Tajikistan, a bordering country, and Cambodia. Our case is that Uyghurs have been arrested and rounded up in those countries, together with many other countries, as part of a plan and policy to deport them into China, where they are put in camps and the appalling things happen to them, as we've heard about tonight. So our whole case rests on the fact that part of the crimes take place in ICC territories, and therefore the court has jurisdiction over those parts that take place there, but also because the crimes continue as continuing crimes into China, the rest of the conduct as well. Likewise, where persons are forced out of China into Tajikistan, over the border, deported there, the crime starts outside the ICC jurisdiction, but it's completed inside. And that also gives the court jurisdiction as a continuing crime. This is a basic principle of criminal law. We use it every day in our different states, where if somebody starts a crime in one country, continues it in another, both countries have a jurisdiction. If you enter into a country, you're subject to its laws and its courts. So we're not doing anything radical here. When China says, well, this is ridiculous, we're not signed up, that's just not right. Because if they send their soldiers and troops and police into Tajikistan, that's a signed up member state of the ICC, they are subject to the laws that are applicable there. Those laws allow the court to exercise jurisdiction. So there can be no doubt about the legality of what we are advancing here. This has been already tested at the ICC in the Rohingya case, Bangladesh-Myanmar situation, where the judges have found that crimes starting in a non-state, in that case Myanmar, but finishing in Bangladesh when Rohingya were allegedly forced into that country and deported there, gives the court jurisdiction over the entire conduct and the other surrounding inhumane acts as well. So it's based on very clear precedent. We have put that forward to the prosecutor, and what she has come back to us with in the second stage, she did this in December, at the end of the year, she said, yes, but I need more evidence of what is happening in Tajikistan and Cambodia and ICC member states. That's not readily available. I've looked publicly, you've given me some, but I need more of that in order to look at this and decide whether to open a full investigation. We have met with the OTP and we've said, yes, that's exactly what we are gathering. It has been difficult to find because it's not out there in the public. Many people are very afraid to come forward, but it does exist. We have given her some. We are adding to that. We've had some difficulties in getting access to some of it because of COVID travel restrictions, but we have people now on the ground gathering that evidence, and we are soon going to give her further evidence and meet with her again. She said she will meet with us before making any further decisions on this, to look at that evidence, to decide whether to go forward and open an investigation. We believe that there is sufficient evidence and that there will be, and that the next step should be for her then to apply to the judges to get authority. That's the procedure you have to go through. Apply to the judges to get authority to open an investigation. That will be a vital step to take in sending a very clear signal that this is a most serious case, deserving of investigation, and that if there's sufficient evidence, people can be prosecuted in the future. So we're now into the third stage of getting that evidence. We're looking to assemble it as rapidly as possible, to add to what is there already, and to provide it to her, meet with her, and push this forward as rapidly as possible. The simple message is that the proceeding and the case are ongoing, despite very disappointingly from many different quarters in different ways, people saying, oh, this case is over. That's just not true. We have got a clear indication from her, the prosecutor, having said that we are gathering this evidence, that she will look at it and consider it further. And I would urge all of those who believe in justice to support this, not to prejudge it, not to say, oh, well, this will never happen. We can't allow that kind of negativity to control us. Of course, we have to base it on the law, but we also have to believe that this can be done. For a case as important as this, it would be horrendous if there were technicalities that got in the way of a proper, full, thorough investigation. We have got nothing to be afraid of. We should launch into this and investigate. The ICC, in my view and the view of our clients, was set up precisely for this purpose, and to do it while it's going on. We all know that Nuremberg was set up after the horrendous atrocities were committed, far too late. Of course, it was a very important step. We wouldn't be here and now talking about these things if there hadn't been a Nuremberg, but it took place very late after the event. We should not allow that to happen again and say in 20 years' time, oh, if we only set up the necessary mechanisms at the time, and then say with hindsight, well, how do you know? Well, we know now. The signs are very clear based on all the evidence. We have the chance to activate the court's jurisdiction properly now, and we should do so, and not leave it to later and try and make excuses then. The fact that it takes place now could save lives, quite simply as that. Yes, it should have been done much sooner, but it's never too late. It could make a vast difference now. Just to end off, of course, there are always hurdles in the way. There are lots of challenges. And as human beings, of course, we need to have belief to go on. We can't run on empty. But what I hope I've conveyed in a short time is that with all of the necessary evidence and necessary support and belief, this can happen. So this is a call for all of those out there who have evidence or know people who have evidence to come forward. You might not even know that it exists or know where it is, but believe me, it's often out there in the places that you don't expect. So it's a call to find all relevant evidence, for people to come forward, not to be afraid. We can put the necessary measures in place to protect you. And then support the call. There are many MPs that are doing it around the world, but support the call for the prosecutor to take the necessary steps to start this investigation. We are at, I say, a critical juncture now, at the beginning of 2021, and I truly hope, on behalf of the victims and our clients, that this will be the year that this appalling situation is finally investigated at the international level. It can happen. We must have that belief, and that it will. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rodney. Well, according to your track record, I'm very, very confident that there will be a positive outcome at the ICC. Now, I would also would like to ask, how could we get people to stay positive about this ICC move?
Well, just to say briefly that I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to talk much more about the details of the evidence and the crimes. The way we have to look at it is that the ICC clearly has legal jurisdiction to do it. There is a obvious path for this to be done, for the investigation to be opened. But we need all of the evidence. So channel all our work into gathering that in a usable form, and then promoting this as widely as possible. The prosecutor needs to know that states across the board, NGOs, universities, those who support human rights across the board are in favor of this, and that there is a comfort level there that allows a prosecutor to take on a very powerful state. Never an easy thing to do. But if we are united and there's solidarity in this, then that will give the prosecutor the necessary strength and direction as well. So we need both the law, the evidence, and then the support. Those three things together, that should give us the necessary belief and hope to achieve this.
Thank you so much for that, Rodney Dixon. Thank you so much for being here. And as a reminder, if you have any questions, please send them here in the meeting chat or on our YouTube live stream comments. Now, Mr. Paul Erdenast, it will be a pleasure for us to hear about what specific evidence there is for this case.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to briefly, and this can only skim the surface of the evidence, of the allegations, and my job, Rodney told me earlier, was to bring home really how serious these offences are and what we're talking about here, genocide, crimes against humanity. But I think Dr. Erkin has really shown and demonstrated that for all to hear, and that has of course made my job much easier. But I will skim the surface of what we have. So firstly, I'll just say what the allegations are in law, the definitions of genocide and crimes against humanity. Then I'm going to highlight the offences that we have evidence of, both public and that which is not in the public domain. And finally, I'll give an example of how Chinese officials push individuals or forcibly transfer individuals over the border from other countries to China in order to detain them and then carry out the appalling abuses that happen within detention. Firstly, allegations in law. The two main allegations here are the most serious in international law: genocide and crimes against humanity. Genocide is defined under Articles 5 and 6 of the International Criminal Court statute, and it's any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. And examples of this, and you will see the parallels with what Doctors Smith Finley and Erkin have already stated are happening. A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. I'll be dealing with that a bit later. E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Again, I'll be dealing with that very shortly. Article 7 is crimes against humanity. These include murder, deportation, torture, persecution, enforced sterilizations, enforced disappearances, and other inhumane acts. Well, we say there's strong evidence of all of these. So these are the sorts of, these are what we have evidence of and what we hope to demonstrate before the International Criminal Court. So what specific offences, therefore, are we saying? Well, firstly, I want to highlight, as Rodney Dixon has already said, once that jurisdiction point, once that's fulfilled, and we're confident that that will be fulfilled, then it's necessary to bring out all the evidence, not just that relating to those who have been transferred, but all the evidence of what's been happening to demonstrate the overall crime. And that's why all this evidence is so important. It's well known that millions of Uyghurs and other Turkic victims have been transferred to the internment camps. We also know through publicly available information based on satellite imagery evidence that's been gathered by BuzzFeed in partnership with the Open Technology Fund, that China are continuing to build larger and larger camps. So this isn't something that's stopping or even slowing down. And again, there's significant evidence of large numbers of people who've simply been killed, been disappeared. It's also well documented, and this is another part of it, the mass surveillance of Uyghurs beyond that experience, far beyond that experience by Han Chinese. Facial recognition cameras every 100, 200 meters down every road, spyware that's required to be installed into phones, all that contributes to the system. And it's all out there in publicly available evidence. Torture. Again, there's both public domain and non-public domain evidence of torture, and this includes camp guards who've spoken to journalists, who've confirmed electrocution. We specifically have both public and other evidence of numerous really quite grisly forms of torture being used, which I won't go into, but that's what we have. Next, forced sterilisation and abortion. Again, there's public domain significant reports from Dr. Adrian Zentz, who's a noted scholar on China and its policies towards Uyghurs, regarding, number one, mass forced sterilisation. And there's evidence from survivors of that this is taking place on a mass scale, and similarly, mass abortions. Furthermore, in a very recent report from the BBC earlier this month, based on evidence from Dr. Zentz, gathered by Dr. Zentz, but evidence of, again, survivors, several Uyghur witnesses have given evidence of systematic use of rape within the camps. So again, this both goes to rape itself, but also, obviously, torture. Which Dr. Smith Finley has talked about, the forcible, the intent to destroy Uyghur culture. And there's, according to a planning document on the Chinese government website, almost 500,000 Uyghur children have been taken from their families, placed in state-run boarding schools. And the boarding schools are designed, as Dr. Smith Finley has stated, to assimilate the children to Han culture at a very early age, away from their families' influence, and those measures to remove Uyghur language being taught in schools. And this shows the intent to destroy Uyghur culture, which is an important component of genocide under the ICC Convention. So my third point, which is the example as to pushing over the border, pushing individuals over the border. So my one example was recorded in late June 2019, and it's been reported on, where a mother and her two toddler daughters, they were deported from Turkey to Tajikistan, and they were then in Tajikistan detained by the Chinese police at the Dushanbe, capital of Tajikistan, International Airport, and taken against their will onto a plane headed to Urumqi. Her sister stated specifically she knows her sister very well. She would never have boarded that flight. And she stated that she then learned that her sister and toddler nieces were given drugs that knocked them unconscious prior to being placed on the plane, and only regaining consciousness when they were on the flight. And two Tajik passengers witnessed this happening, and that's how an Uyghur exile group in Turkey found this out. The witnesses added that they saw 5 other Uyghurs on the flight being deported to China against their will. The whereabouts of the mother and the toddlers is still unknown, according to information received by human rights groups in Turkey, and the understanding is that she's been sent to an internment camp. So that's just one example out of very many that we have of the transfers that have been regularly taking place from ICC member states to China. And so I'm going to leave it there, but I'm sure Rodney and I will be very glad to answer questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that and for presenting the evidence. As a law student myself, I'm very excited to see the outcome of the legal complaint to the ICC, and I'm really looking forward. I think I can speak for everyone when I say I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcomes of that, and I'm sure it will be very positive. Now, I would like to transition to Dr. Schabas. It's an absolute honor to have you here with us. Now, Dr. Schabas, he is a professor of international law at Middlesex University, London, in the UK, and he's also a professor at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and he is a door tenant at the Chambers of 9 Bedford Row. He has wrote over 20 books on international law, human rights, genocide, atrocities, and the death penalty. Now, Dr. Schabas, it would be an absolute honor and a pleasure if you can give us a basic overview of the human rights implications and how this fits in the timeline of human rights.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for involving me in this session, for inviting me, and I'm very happy. I hope I can make a useful contribution. I have worked on issues relating to China for more than 20 years now. I've been there many times. When I say issues, always human rights issues. I've lectured in many universities there on different issues relating to China's human rights situation, and I've also supervised a number of doctoral students, Chinese students who came and studied with me and have returned to China now, where they are involved in teaching their students about international human rights standards. It's a frustrating country to deal with. It's huge, it's powerful, and the room for human rights activity within the country is narrow and limited, and so it's not a simple thing to take on. Organizations like Amnesty, let me say as well that I've worked with Amnesty for over almost 30 years. I've done missions for Amnesty International, and I've always not only highly valued the organization, but also appreciated its methods of work and its realistic approach, also its insistence on having hard evidence and facts before it starts making allegations, and that's been one of the keys to its huge credibility and its success over the years. And Rod Dixon spoke earlier about this approach of trying to involve the International Criminal Court. When the famous judgment of the court was issued a few years ago in the situation between Myanmar and Bangladesh, immediately I said, this is opening a door for the Uyghurs. And I've said that in lectures and in conferences. I was a bit surprised. I haven't been involved with Rod and Paul in their application, but what the decision on Myanmar does is it talks about people who are being deported from Myanmar into a state that's a party to the Rome Statute, Bangladesh. And my idea was that that would work for China as well, rather than go in the other direction, which is what it seems that is being proposed. There are two reasons for that. One is, of course, legally the argument is stronger because you're arguing that they've already been victims of a crime and they're being deported rather than being sent to a place where they may be victims of a crime. And also, I think the proof of it must be more straightforward. You described a situation of a woman who was forcibly put on a plane and sent to China, and now no one knows where she is. We're going to have to know where she is and be able to bring her to court to be a witness. And that's a problem. It's a problem that's easier to address if your victims are people who've left the country, because you can talk to them, you can interview them, and you can gather evidence. So I think my own idea is that that's probably more productive as a way forward. It should be said that the restriction on that is imposed by the nature of the crime. According to the precedent of the International Criminal Court, that applies to the crime of deportation, which is in effect a consequence of persecution. Persecution more in a refugee sense than in an international law sense. Persecution, which then provokes a refugee flow, and then you can proceed on the crime against humanity of deportation. And that was a very creative idea of the prosecutor of the court, and it was accepted by the judges, but it's limited in scope. I don't think that people should get any ideas that that's going to enable a prosecution for genocide. That would amount to saying, it seems to me, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade here, but it would seem to me that that amounts to saying that the International Criminal Court can prosecute pretty much anything, anywhere. And that's not the legal model of the International Criminal Court. The case with Myanmar has opened a little gap there that protects states that have not joined the court for things they've done on their own territory. And it may be applicable to the People's Republic of China as well. I think that logic works. But it doesn't open up all the crimes in the Rome Statute. I just want to mention a couple of other concerns. I attended yesterday a seminar organized by the International Bar Association. Perhaps some people here were also present at that session. And they were talking about, they had three parliamentarians from the UK on the panel. And they were talking about different options and about this idea of letting courts in the UK decide this question. They also, and I was a bit surprised, not to hear Ian Duncan Smith, who's a very right-wing conservative, talking with enthusiasm about the Trump administration, but I was a little more surprised to hear Lisa Nandy of the Labour Party praise the Trump administration. As you know, Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo in their final days made this statement about the genocide in China, but in the context of a campaign of hatred that's been promoted by Trump and Pompeo. And I think I just want to steer clear of that in my engagement on this issue. I don't want to be instrumentalized in any way by what ultimately is a belligerent and aggressive agenda coming from the United States. The other thing is, I'm not at all convinced that this idea of asking judges here in the UK to make what are called preliminary determinations of genocide is likely to be very productive. You know, the term genocide is used in a lot of different contexts, and when Jo Smith Finley spoke about it at the beginning, she referred to and quoted or referred to the writings of Raphael Lemkin, who was the man who invented the word. And we need to bear in mind that Raphael Lemkin's ideas are not really fully reflected in the Genocide Convention, which is the definition that we apply legally. He had a much broader view of it that included and gave a lot of space to things that we now call cultural genocide. So the term cultural genocide is perfectly valid and useful, but it's important to understand that it doesn't correspond to the legal definition of genocide, which is in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. So I just, before campaigning to get Parliament to give the authority to judges of the High Court, who are not also always known for their most progressive and liberal views on human rights issues, to give them the idea, the decision on whether or not genocide is being committed, I wouldn't be at all confident that they'll give you what you want, and that would be disastrous for this campaign. To campaign for the right to take these cases to the court, to get that right, then to go before a judge and have the judge say, I've looked at the law, I've looked at the judgments of the International Court of Justice, this doesn't add up, it's not strong enough. Last week there was a chamber, barristers' chambers in London, Essex Court Chambers, issued a legal opinion on the Uyghurs, where they spoke about both genocide and crimes against humanity. And crimes against humanity is, I think, a straightforward case, and there's a lot of merit in it. Genocide, I think, is a harder argument to make, and all the chambers could say in their opinion was that there's an arguable case. Well, arguable case is just about as low as you can go on the hierarchy of in making allegations in criminal law or in law in general. It's not very compelling. And so I think my own view is that that investing too much in this argument about genocide is not that helpful. It creates a buzz for a little while. It creates a little excitement. But ultimately, it's better to have a more stable grounding in the law. And that's the law of gross and systematic violations of human rights. And we've heard many, many examples of that here. And its reflection in international criminal law, which is the concept of crimes against humanity. That's where really those are ideas that gain traction. Of course, there we have to find the appropriate forums as well to do it. And the problem with China, it's a problem that we have with all powerful countries, frankly, is getting in the door through the various mechanisms. We have it with China. We have it with the United States. Both of them we have it with Russia. They're extremely resistant to accepting and recognizing the mechanisms for monitoring human rights. And they're also extremely powerful in bodies like the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, where they throw a lot of weight around. You're in an organization where there are 47 members, but if they're there, they seem to be worth more than one vote out of 47 because of who they are and because of their strength. So I think that's really where the focus should be. There have been calls to set up a new commission of inquiry by the Human Rights Council. It may be possible, depending on the allegations, to get that. And that would be an important development, although there would be an obstacle in terms of conducting it, because it will be impossible to get, unlikely to get access to the territory. That's the other problem. So I don't want to sound negative about this. Amnesty International has been campaigning about human rights in China for forever, and we'll keep doing it. But it takes patience, and there's no silver bullet that's going to solve this problem overnight. It's a matter of patiently campaigning and using the tools that we know that have been effective. I do think that there is, as they say, there's a door that's open at the International Criminal Court, but there too, it should not be seen as a panacea, because even if you get the court to exercise jurisdiction, it still can't do anything until it gets a live suspect. And that means that's not a simple matter. A live suspect where there's evidence of that suspect that they can bring to bear. And that's hard when you can't go onto the territory of the state. It's very hard. The court right now is investigating situations in other powerful countries, Russia, the United States, but we encountered the same problems. So you can get lucky where some suspect falls into the hands of the court by inadvertence, somehow. But it's not a straightforward matter. And I think that the real focus, and this is where organizations like Amnesty International excel, is in the campaigning through organizations within the United Nations, like the Human Rights Council, and other bodies of, for example, the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schabas, for that. I would like to just ask you a quick question. As your contribution to the documentary of No Fire Zone, the killing fields of Sri Lanka, there was a major cover-up in those operations. How do those cover-up tactics work in this particular circumstances of the Uyghurs in China?
I think, Zach, you're referring to the documentary of that was done on for television, was shown around the world about Sri Lanka about a decade ago, 10 or 11 years ago, and there was an amazing amount of hard evidence in the form of, for example, films that were taken on mobile phones of atrocities being committed by the Sri Lankan forces when they entered that final battle. It was mainly about the final days of the Tamil Tigers, when they went in and they had a huge group of Tamils who were quite isolated, and then they were firing on them, and when they took many of them prisoner, there were a range of atrocities that were committed. As I say, there was a lot of hard evidence in the form of photographs, films, and of course witnesses who saw it and could talk about it, and that was an important strength. I'm not aware, I'm not a specialist on the Uyghur situation, and I'm sure that Erkin and Rod and Paul have access to much more information. But I know there we had a lot, and the other thing is we were not distracted by making the argument about genocide. We were just arguing. Nobody was really making that claim. We were saying these were war crimes, and they were crimes against humanity, and we had a good, solid case about that. We didn't have any better luck with the International Criminal Court on it because Sri Lanka was not a state party to the Rome Statute, and that's our problem with many of these countries.
Now, you have quite a bit of experience when it comes to inquiries and investigations for the ICC and for the United Nations. Now, if there are any further investigations done by the ICC office, what kind of outcomes should we expect from those?
Well, I think the ICC right now is in a situation where they're not going to conduct their own investigations. They legally they're limited in their ability to do that because of the stage that they're at in the case of the Uyghurs, and they also are challenged because of the resources that would be involved. But I think the main obstacle for them is legal. They're not allowed to investigate the situation until they get the go-ahead, either from three judges of the court. Two out of three judges would have to authorize them, and the prosecutor would have to ask for that. So, or a state that's a member of the court could ask the court to investigate this. And then they would do it, but again, bear in mind that the court has limited resources. It's been in existence now for 18 years, soon 19 years, and it's had 6 convictions, it's had a relatively modest number of trials, and it's got other big issues on its plate, including the ones where it's working right now, where there are ongoing trials, all of them in African countries. And then it's looking at the United States and the Taliban in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Israel and Palestine, Ukraine. And so you've got to elbow in there and raise the profile of this issue to get their attention. That's the other thing. So you have a prosecutor we have a new prosecutor, just elected a few days ago. And he's well known to all of us because he's a barrister in London, and people who've worked in the field have known him for many, many years, and we wish him well. But he has a lot on his desk right now And it's always been a problem with human rights, is that the people are campaigning for particular issues, and they want to get their issue to the top of the pile. And you have to do that in a very an appropriate and creative way, because you can't do it. You can't just do it by saying that the other cases are not important, because they're important too. And that's the problem, and that's always been a problem with human rights generally. As you know, you can look at Amnesty International's website, and they have things that they focus on and other things that they don't, that they leave to other organizations. And so that's just being practical. They can't deal with every human rights violation everywhere in the world at any one time, and the prosecutor can't do that either. So a campaign is necessary to raise the profile of an issue so that it gets the attention of the prosecutor, because you have to, it's not as if the prosecutor, years ago the prosecutor had nothing to do. It was easier to get the prosecutor's attention. And now you've got to push other things off the table and get the prosecutor to drop other issues that other people have campaigned for, to get this one give it more priority. That's the challenge. I mean, that's what I don't have to tell Paul and Rod. That's what they're doing, but they know how frustrating and difficult that is.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Shu. That's very, very informative, and we look forward to seeing what the ICC prosecutor decides to do. Now, Sam, do we have any questions for any of our speakers?
So I'll take some questions from the chat. So someone has asked, why do other Muslim countries not address and accuse China of genocide and raise their concerns about the camps, or why are we not hearing about it? I'll just leave that open, but they directed it towards Rod and Dr. Erkin.
Yes. It is mainly a money issue, and that's another tragedy for us. I have been going around giving lectures in different mosques and churches and synagogues. The Uyghur people have thought that Muslims are family, and very concerned about atrocities in other parts of the world, like Palestinians and Iraq, for example. But when it came to us, we were completely abandoned by the whole Muslim countries. There are four main reasons. The number one is there is an organization, the Arabic Organization of Arabic Countries or something, 57 members. For most of them, China is the number one partner, number one trade partner for them. So they are very tight with China. So they have very good connection economically. Second big problem is all those Muslim countries, they have a human rights issue of their own. They are dictators, basically. They don't have freedom in those countries. If they stand up and speak to China about us, they have to solve their own problem. That's the number two reason. Number three is they are controlling the propaganda very tightly. The people in most Muslim countries don't know what's happening in East Turkestan to the Uyghur people. They're controlling it very tightly. These are the main reasons that they're not speaking up against us. And now this comes to a very fundamental problem that is Islam still valid? When I gave presentation in several places, I mentioned this thing. And we have to think very carefully now. What is the Islam that we know is correct? What's wrong there? Is the Islam that Uyghur people know is wrong, or the Quran that all people learned is wrong? Why, when there's an atrocity, when a group of people got oppressed by a tyranny like China, why the other countries don't stand up? They're supposed to stand up. They're supposed to work together on this issue. But we are abandoned completely by our Muslim brothers and also by our Turkish brothers too. So the Uyghur people are very alone. Right now, the best friends we got is the US and the European countries. But the other part of the world not caring that much about us. just another tragedy. But those three factors are the main reasons why they are keeping quiet. Actually, they're working with China. They praise China too, like Pakistan. Pakistan praised what China is doing to Uyghur people because of the money, basically. I don't know when the world started changing like this. Now when I watch some ancient movies, I start crying. People could die for principle. But now everybody could die for money. That's the whole world changed so drastically in the last 100 years or so. It's so big change right now, and so they just openly speak up, but for money, not for against injustice or unfairness, something like that. It's a big tragedy for us, and so we don't know what to do. Except doing what we are doing right now. Thank you for asking this question.
Can I just add that the campaign that Bill so rightly mentioned is one that we are launching to try and involve as many countries as possible, not just Western countries. So focusing on other countries, looking at the Muslim world to support as much as possible as well. This isn't about one part of the world or another. As united as we can be, as I've stressed, is going to be absolutely essential. So it is part of what we are doing, looking at bringing in as many countries to support this as possible, and to give the prosecutor that comfort that this is a truly international call. But also, and I think this is something we're emphasizing in the campaign. I mean, we are highlighting the severity of the atrocities we're talking about here. I mean, I'm not trying to compare with one situation to another, one war to another. But I mean, where you have sort of mass sterilization taking place, in 2021, we're not talking about an alleged cultural genocide here. I mean, nothing could be more intrusive and physical than that. I mean, that has all the hallmarks of going back to the Second World War and other similar crimes. I mean, I hate creating a hierarchy of crimes, but that's just what the evidence shows at the moment. Yes, now, of course, it has to be further investigated. There are all kinds of issues that could arise about the evidence, and defenses could emerge, but that's all for the trial. That should not be a barrier to starting the investigation when you have those kinds of credible, such serious allegations, which we just haven't heard of for so long. Plus the recent accounts of mass rape centers. Yes, this often takes place in other conflicts, but in this situation, the way in which it's been systematically organized, coupled with separating families out. We've seen the pictures of people being lined up and put on trains. I mean, this all has the hallmarks of some of the worst genocides ever. When that starts to happen, we simply can't say, oh, well, there are a lot of difficulties. Yes, there might be, but those can get sorted out in the litigation process. That's what the trial process is there for, to have guarantees to allow everyone to be heard. And if the Chinese officials have a defense, of course, they'll be allowed to present that. They shouldn't stop this happening. If they say they're truly innocent, well, then bring it to court and let's hear it. I don't think any of us, if we had been victimized in this way, would demand any less. I mean, that's the bare minimum, is to have your day in court, at least have it investigated. And our case is that we are easily over that threshold in terms of jurisdiction. I mean, I hear what Bill is saying about some of the difficulties that we'll face. Yes, but we have based it purely on the law that has been advanced so far, and applying that law. We're not only looking at deportations going from Tajikistan and other states into China. We're looking at it both ways as well. People who have been escaping and coming out. But then we're finding the evidence is that what the Chinese authorities do is they have their officials outside the country, and they recapture people and bring them back again because they don't want them to get out and start publicizing what happened and mobilizing. So it's a vicious circle of deportations going both ways. And our case is based on both. But it's primarily based on the fact that either way, whether you're going in or you're going out, it's a continuing crime. And that's what the judges have found, that where part of the conduct, an essential part of the conduct, takes place in an ICC state party on that territory, then that gives you jurisdiction over the entire conduct. So if you are kidnapping people in Tajikistan to take them into camps for them to be sterilized there, well, the first stage of the alleged genocide is the kidnap. You can't actually have the rest unless you have captured them. And the fact that China is prepared to go into ICC territory and do that means they then become susceptible to its jurisdiction. In exactly the same way as if I go from the UK today to Holland, I'm subject to the laws there. I can't commit crimes there and say, no, I'm not subject to your laws. Actually, I'm a UK national. Everyone would laugh at that. So why is it any different for international jurisdiction? So the law is absolutely solidly clear on this, and we're not sticking our necks out in looking at deportation going both ways, but plus also the kinds of offences that are starting both crimes against humanity and genocide. And yes, there might well be arguments both ways, but let them be heard now in court. What are we afraid of is what I'm saying. This will allow for the victims to have a voice, but it will also allow for the law to develop, to apply to protect people now and in the future. So we shouldn't be afraid of embracing this. And my message early on, I was trying to emphasize we should banish negativity, not because we're not worried about the law, but we should make the law apply effectively to protect citizens and ensure that we establish precedents, not only for this case, it's vital for this case as a deterrent now, but also for the future of the ICC. And yeah, we will be competing with lots of other situations, but I would think that this one must rank very highly as one that deserves the ICC's attention. I think this is why the court was established, for these kinds of massive overarching crimes that simply can't be tried in national jurisdictions. They have to be put before an international court.
Thank you very much. Let me add several items for this one about the sterilization. About 3 weeks ago, I got some information that China has a mobile operating room. It's basically a car like an RV. They drive it in front of the people's house and do the operation right there. It's happening right now. And the another thing is the camp guards lending out the detainees for money. Like some factory comes to the camp and they take about 50 people, 50 yuan a day, and the money goes to the guard's pocket. It's a making money mechanism. And the Uyghur organs are being sold, and the Uyghur hairs. You heard recently about the hair products made out of the Uyghur hairs, and the blood plasma. There are some companies also listed in the stock market in the U.S. linked to the situation. The one company said they will gather 90 tons of blood plasma in Xinjiang, 90 tons in 5 years. Where does this blood come from? The Chinese people don't like to donate blood. They're against to it. So they have a huge operation in that regard in East Turkestan. And you heard about this prostitute whores situation. I heard 1 year ago that big camps near big cities like Urumqi, they set up prostitute rooms. They bring in customers from outside and make money that way with Uyghur detainees. And you can also look up the human milk for adults. The Uyghur women were used for that one also. Gang rape first and give birth. When after give birth, they collect their milk to sell as a product. Another big issue is the installing handmen into Uyghur families whose husbands have been taken. It's very widespread. There recently a lot of video we are seeing it. Basically, in 1999, Jiang Zemin ordered to kill the Falun Gong followers, more than 1 million people. And the Chinese army said, why we kill them as it is? Let us make money. As they set up this organ harvesting business. Now, in East Turkestan, any guard can make money in any way they want. From Uyghur people. It's just so arbitrary, no any rule, nothing like that. So I get this kind of information all the time. I just want to let you know that there are many other dimensions like this. about what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you for those
Joe,
answers.
did you want to add something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say the same thing. Joe, you had your hand up. Do you want to add anything on?
Sorry, you cut out there. I couldn't hear what you said before.
You had your hand up. Do you want to follow on? Okay.
Yes. No. I was just going to return to the original question and just say that another reason why the Muslim nations are quiet on this issue is because many of them have a very questionable human rights situation at home themselves. So, you know, I think Washington Post summed it up really well when they described the visit of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia to China, and we see this picture of MBS grinning and Xi Jinping grinning and shaking hands very happily as MBS tells Xi Jinping that he is absolutely doing the right thing with the internment camps to de-radicalize the Uyghurs, and he is fully supported. And the Washington Post summed this situation up with a brilliant sentence which went like this: "You can have your concentration camps, I can have my murder." And they were referring, of course, to the Khashoggi murder.
Thank you so much for that, Rod, Erkin, and Joe. Sam, are there any other questions?
There's two questions, but they are from different sides. So one's asking about what would be the efficacy of individual boycotts, and then another one's linked tangentially. What do you think would be the impact of imposing trade sanctions on China, if it's possible? Would it impact this situation anyway?
I think both of them help, but they cannot be the final solution. If China get trouble financially, at least the CCP regime will fall down. And that way we have some hope that the current situation will change. But that may take more than just boycotting the Chinese products, something like that. That's one thing. Right now, the biggest concern I have is after World War II, like international institutions like the UN played major role in setting the order right in the world scale. Right now, the China bought up all of them, and China sits in the UN Human Rights Council. It's basically making a mafia member as the chief of the other people or something like that. So if the whole world continue as it is right now, the modern civilization system may break down under on the Chinese hand. China does not have any intention to make the international order in a sound way. They don't have this. They want to rule the world in their way. Just 2 days ago, Xi Jinping called the whole Chinese people to return to their Asian culture. They want to revive 2,000 years of their culture, their culture before 2,000 years ago. It is very contradicts where the world is heading right now. So the people should think in a bigger term like this. It's not just a Uyghur problem. If this problem will not be solved, the world can get into an even much bigger problem later.
Joe, do you want to follow on? Go.
Just in response to the question about boycotts, I think the single most effective boycott we can all get involved in right now is to encourage athletes and governments to boycott the Winter Olympics in Beijing. This is really, really important. And obviously, many campaigners have been trying to address this with the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. They're not listening. They seem to think that sport is completely disconnected from politics. And I beg to differ. I think sport and politics have always been very closely related. So I think this is one area where we can really make a difference, because what really hurts China is when its global image is damaged. China doesn't like to have a negative global image. That's why they have been trying so hard to re-represent everything that all of the stories that we are telling, the investigative journalists and the scholars and the campaigners are telling about the horrible abuses in Xinjiang at the moment. China doesn't like this, so China tries to rewrite the story. So I think, you know, the Olympic boycott can be a really important area.
That's very true. It is right now. What's happening is just like holding a Winter Olympic game in Germany after 1945. I mean, it's incredible what's going on. This should be a very good start, actually, fixing this problem.
Thank you so much for answering the questions. Due to time constraints, we're going to move to final remarks. Do any of you have any final remarks to end on?
I just want to thank you for everyone for your support. That means a lot to us. Thank you so much. And I am basically engineering talking, so excuse me for that one too.
Dr. Smith Finley?
Yeah, I would just like to let people know, let the audience know that Newcastle University is holding a conference relating to this theme in September. It's called the Xinjiang Crisis, Genocide, Ethnocide, or Crimes Against Humanity. And what we're wanting to do is to bring together Xinjiang studies scholars with law and genocide scholars, with international barristers, with campaigners. And we're trying to get all of those people into the same room, either physically or virtually together, to try to thrash out a solution and an effective strategy for this horrible situation. So yeah, so please watch out. We'll be announcing more about this on Twitter shortly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith Finley. If you have any more information about that, you can send us the link and we can share it with the audience. Any other final remarks?
I'll just say thank you very much for arranging this forum. It's been people who committed to justice.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Any other?
There is a website called Uyghurinfo.org. We are collecting all the major media reports there. So for people who are doing research, that's a very good site to use.
If you can send that to either